Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And let me say thank you to you, Mr. Rohrbacher and Mr. Berman, for allowing me to testify this morning at this hearing. Explain I do not sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but have an interest in this area with legislation. I also believe that mapping out our future relationship with Iraq is vital to our national interest in the region. And as has been expressed, we have good reason to be concerned. In June, Defense Secretary Gates said we would have a, quote, long and enduring presence in Iraq, borrowing from the Korea model and the security relationship that we have with Japan. Then in November, we note that President Bush and Prime Minister al-Maliki agreed to the Declaration of Principles for a long-term U.S.-Iraq relationship to be finalized by July 31st. I, too, am concerned about the security commitments and assurances that our nation plans on providing according to this declaration. And as has been described as well, when you take a look at, quote, defending Iraq's democratic system against internal, external threats, what are these undefined threats? Would we be obliged to preemptively strike Sunni fighters beyond Iraq's borders, or even strike homegrown armed factions Maliki's own government deems to be a threat? This week, Defense Secretary Gates indicated that the agreement, quote, will not contain a commitment to defend Iraq, yet I remain concerned that such a commitment is nevertheless included in a written document signed by two heads of state. This begs the question, do Secretary Gates' comments indicate that the President will abrogate the Declaration of Principles? Either way, it's clear that any agreement with Iraq would likely authorize our forces to engage in combat. Currently, U.S. forces in Iraq are operating under the UN mandate. Should the mandate end, as proposed in the Declaration of Principles, I believe any continued authority for U.S. forces to engage in combat in Iraq should be approved by legislatures in both Iraq and the United States. I am interested to hear what our witnesses have to say about past UN resolutions on Iraq, the current UN mandate, and Congress's role as we transition into a new security arrangement. Secretary Gates also testified that the administration will not, quote, seek permanent bases in Iraq, contradicting an earlier statement from Assistant to the President and Deputy National Security Advisor for Iraq and Afghanistan, Lieutenant General Douglas Lute, who called permanent bases, quote, a key item for negotiation. Despite Secretary Gates' comments, the President actually made matters worse by issuing a signing statement along with the 2008 National Defense Authorization Act declaring that he had the power to bypass a provision in the bill barring the establishment of, quote, any military installation or base for the purpose of providing for the permanent stationing of United States Armed Forces in Iraq, end quote. I'd be interested in hearing our witnesses' professional and legal opinions on the executive's authority to issue such statements, especially in the realm of foreign policy and defense. I also understand that the administration has finally come around, consulted members of the Foreign Affairs Committee about the agreement in a closed setting. Administration officials, as has been stated here time and again, declined to come and openly testify. If they're serious about transparency and openness, they should come to testify rather than keeping the public in the dark and the Congress in the dark. I have the honor of serving on the Budget Committee, and we heard from Mr. Nussel yesterday or the day before yesterday, where the President's budget asked for $70 billion for Iraq and Afghanistan. General Gates says that it ought to be $170 billion. Nowhere, anywhere in any discussion is what our costs will be as a result of this Declaration of Principles and what that means. So the total just bypassing what the impact of this effort will be. We've been in Iraq for nearly 5 years. I have introduced the Iraq Strategic Agreement Review Act about talking about our long-term relationship in Iraq. Because we have been there 5 years. Clear majority of Americans believe we should bring our troops home as soon as possible. And in part, this Congress was elected out of dissatisfaction with this war. President must not be permitted to unilaterally tie the hands of his successor. We in the Congress have the right, we have the responsibility to help to plan our future course on an issue of such import to this nation. I am looking forward to our witnesses' testimony. Let me personally welcome, if you will indulge me, Mr. Chairman, Professor Hathaway, the Yale Law School, who is a constituent, And thank you for your good work and for being here, as well as Dr. Wedgwood, who taught at Yale not that long ago. So my district is very well represented here this morning. I hope our offices can work together so that we better understand the constitutional issues that are at stake as we move forward. Again, thank you to the chairman and the ranking member for allowing me to be here today.
Well, thank you. And this is truly